A sick Collier, David Herbert Lawrence, she was too good for him, everybody said. Yet still she did not regret marrying him. He had come courting her when he was only 19, and she 20. He was in build what they call a tight little fellow, short, dark, with a warm color, and that upright set of the head and chest, that flaunting way in movement recalling a mating bird, which denotes a body taut and compact with life. Being a good worker he had earned decent money in the mine, and having a good home had saved a little. She was a cook at Uplands, a tall, fair girl, very quiet. Having seen her walk down the street, Horspool had followed her from a distance. He was taken with her, he did not drink, and he was not lazy. So, although he seemed a bit simple, without much intelligence, but having a sort of physical brightness, she considered, and accepted him. When they were married they went to live in Scargill Street, in a highly respectable 6-roomed house which they had furnished between them. The street was built up the side of a long, steep hill. It was narrow and rather tunnel-like. Nevertheless, the back looked out over the adjoining pasture, across a wide valley of fields and woods, in the bottom of which the mine lay snugly. He made himself gaffer in his own house. She was unacquainted with the Collier's mode of life. They were married on a Saturday. On the Sunday night he said, "Set table for my breakfast, and put my pit things afront o fire. I'll be getting up at 5:30. Than Edna shift thice and not till winter likes." He showed her how to put a newspaper on the table for a cloth. When she demurred, "I want none o' your white cloth sight morning. I like to be able to slobber if I feel like it," he said. He put before the fire his moleskin trousers, a clean singlet, or sleeveless vest of thick flannel, a pair of stockings and his pit boots, arranging them all to be warm and ready for morning. Now Thasses. That once doing every night, punctually at 5:30 he left her, without any form of leave-taking, going downstairs in his shirt. When he arrived home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon his dinner was ready to be dished up. She was startled when he came in, a short, sturdy figure, with a face indescribably black and streaked. She stood before the fire in her white blouse and white apron, a fair girl, the picture of beautiful cleanliness. He climaxed in his heavy boots. "Well, how's it gone on?" he asked. "I was ready for you to come home," she replied tenderly. In his black face the whites of his brown eyes flashed at her. "And I were ready for comin'," he said. He planked his tin bottle and snap bag on the dresser, took off his coat and scarf and waistcoat, dragged his armchair nearer the fire and sat down. "Let's hae a bit o' dinner, then I'm about clammed," he said. "Aren't you going to wash yourself first?" "What am I to wash missin' for?" "Well, you can't eat your dinner." "Oh, strike a daisy, missus. Dunna I eat my snap pitwetweshin ? Forced to." She served the dinner and sat opposite him. His small bullet head was quite black, save for the whites of his eyes and his scarlet lips. It gave her a queer sensation to see him open his red mouth and bare his white teeth as he ate. His arms and hands were mottled black. His bare, strong neck got a little fairer as it settled towards his shoulders, reassuring her. There was the faint indescribable odor of the pit in the room, an odor of damp, exhausted air. "Why is your vest so black on the shoulders?" she asked. "My singlet. That's what a drop in on us from roof. This is a dry on as I put on afore I come up. They hae gret clothes osses, and as we change us things, we put 'em on theatre dry." When he washed himself, kneeling on the hearthrug stripped to the waist, she felt afraid of him again. He was so muscular, he seemed so intent on what he was doing, so intensely himself, like a vigorous animal. And as he stood wiping himself, with his naked breast towards her, she felt rather sick, seeing his thick arms bulge their muscles. They were nevertheless very happy. He was at a great pitch of pride because of her. The men in the pit might chaff him, they might try to entice him away, but nothing could reduce his self-assured pride because of her. Nothing could unsettle his almost infantile satisfaction. In the evening he sat in his armchair chattering to her, or listening as she read the newspaper to him. When it was fine, he would go into the street, squat on his heels as colliers do, with his back against the wall of his parlor, and call to the passers-by, in greeting, one after another. If no one were passing, He was content just to squat and smoke, having such a fund of sufficiency and satisfaction in his heart. He was well married. They had not been wed a year when all Brent and Wellwood's men came out on strike. Willie was in the union, so with a pinch they scrambled through. The furniture was not all paid for, and other debts were incurred. She worried and contrived. He left it to her. But he was a good husband. He gave her all he had. The men were out 15 weeks. They had been back just over a year when Willie had an accident in the mine, tearing his bladder. At the pit head the doctor talked of the hospital. Losing his head entirely, the young Collier raved like a madman, what with pain and fear of hospital. "Theslt go home, Willie, theslt go home," the deputy said. A lad warned the wife to have the bed ready. Without speaking or hesitating she prepared. But when the ambulance came, and she heard him shout with pain at being moved, she was afraid lest she should sink down. They carried him in. "You should have had a bed ith parlour, Mrs., said the deputy, "then we should na ha had to hawks him upstairs, and it you'd have saved your legs, but it was too late now." They got him upstairs. They let me lie, Lucy. He was crying. They let me lie 2 mortal hours on th sleck before they took me out to th stall. Th Bean, Lucy, th Bean, oh, Lucy, th Bean, th Bean, I know th pain's bad, Willie, I know. But you must try and bear it a bit, tha manna carry on in that form, lad, thy missis'll never be able to stan it, said the deputy. I canna help it, it's th Bean, it's th Bean, he cried again. He had never been ill in his life. When he had smashed a finger he could look at the wound. But this pain came from inside, and terrified him. At last he was soothed and exhausted. It was some time before she could undress him and wash him. He would let no other woman do for him, having that savage modesty usual in such men. For 6 weeks he was in bed, suffering much pain. The doctors were not quite sure what was the matter with him, and scarcely knew what to do. He could eat, he did not lose flesh, nor strength, yet the pain continued, and he could hardly walk at all. In the 6th week the men came out in the national strike. He would get up quite early in the morning and sit by the window. On Wednesday, the 2nd week of the strike, he sat gazing out on the street as usual, a bullet-headed young man, still vigorous looking, but with a peculiar expression of hunted fear in his face. "Lucy," he called. Lucy, she, pale and worn, ran upstairs at his bidding. "Gie me a handkerchief," he said. "Why, you've got one," she replied, coming near. "Tha nedna touch me," he cried. Feeling his pocket, he produced a white handkerchief. "I non want a white un, gie me a red un," he said. "And if anybody comes to see you," she answered, giving him a red handkerchief. "Besides," she continued, "you needn't ha brought me upstairs for that. I believe th Peen's comin' on again," he said, with a little horror in his voice. "It isn't, you know, it isn't," she replied. "The doctor says you imagine it's there when it isn't. Canna I feel what's inside me?" he shouted. "There's a traction engine coming downhill," she said. "That'll scatter them. I'll just go and finish your pudding." She left him. The traction engine went by, shaking the houses. Then the street was quiet, save for the men. A gang of youths from 15 to 25 years old were playing marbles in the middle of the road. Other little groups of men were playing on the pavement. The street was gloomy. Willie could hear the endless calling and shouting of men's voices. "Tha right skinchin, Irina, come here with that blood alley, swap us for fort, Shona, geese hole don't." He wanted to be out, he wanted to be playing marbles. The pain had weakened his mind, so that he hardly knew any self-control. Presently another gang of men lounged up the street. It was pay morning. The union was paying the men in the primitive chapel. They were returning with their half-sovereigns. "Sorry," bawled a voice. "Sorry, the word is a form of address, corruption probably of Syrah." Willie started almost out of his chair. "Sorry," again bawled a great voice. "Art goin' wi' me to see Knott's Playvilla?" Many of the marble players started up. "What time is it?" "There's no trains, we s'll hate our walk." The street was alive with men. "Who's goin' to Nottingham to see th match?" shouted the same big voice. A very large, tipsy man, with his cap over his eyes, was calling, "Come on come on. came many voices. The street was full of the shouting of men. They split up in excited cliques and groups. "Play up, knots!" The big man shouted. "Play up, knots!" shouted the youths and men. They were at kindling pitch. It only needed a shout to rouse them. Of this the careful authorities were aware. I'm going," shouted the sick man at his window. Lucy came running upstairs. "I'm going to see Knots play Villa on Th Meadows ground," he declared. You can't go. There are no trains. You can't walk 9 miles. "I'm going to see Th match," he declared, rising. "You know you can't. Sit down now and be quiet." She put her hand on him. He shook it off. "Leave me alone, leave me alone. It's the as May's Th Peen come, it's the... I'm going to Nottingham to see Th football match. Sit down, folks'll hear you, and what will they think? Come off and me. Come off. It's her as does it. Come off." He seized hold of her. His little head was bristling with madness, and he was strong as a lion. "Oh, Willie!" she cried. It's her. Kill her." He shouted. "Kill her, Willie, folks'll hear you. Th Peen's comin' on again, I tell you. I'll kill her for it." He was completely out of his mind. She struggled with him to prevent his going to the stairs. When she escaped from him, he was shouting and raving. She beckoned to her neighbor, a girl of 24, who was cleaning the window across the road. Ethel Meller was the daughter of a well-to-do checkweightman. She ran across in fear to Mrs. Horspool. Hearing the man raving, people were running out in the street and listening. Ethel hurried upstairs. Everything was clean and pretty in the young home. Willie was staggering round the room, after the slowly retreating Lucy, shouting, "Kill her! Kill her, Mr. Horspool!" cried Ethel, leaning against the bed, white as the sheets, and trembling. "Whatever are you saying? I tell you it's her fault as Th Peen comes on, I tell you it is. Kill her, kill Mrs. Horspool!" cried the trembling girl. "Why, you're ever so fond of her, you know you are. The Peen I hate such a lot, oh Peen I want to kill her." He was subsiding. When he sat down his wife collapsed in a chair, weeping noiselessly. The tears ran down Ethel's face. He sat staring out of the window, then the old, hurt look came on his face. "What are they I been saying?" he asked, looking piteously at his wife. "Why," said Ethel, "you've been carrying on something awful, saying, 'Kill her, have I, Lucy?'" He faltered. "You didn't know what you were saying," said his young wife gently but coldly. His face puckered up. He bit his lip, then broke into tears, sobbing uncontrollably, with his face to the window. There was no sound in the room but of 3 people crying bitterly, breath caught in sobs. Suddenly Lucy put away her tears and went over to him. "You didn't know what you were saying, Willie. I know you didn't. I knew you didn't, all the time. It doesn't matter, Willie. Only don't do it again." In a little while, when they were calmer, she went downstairs with Ethel. "See if anybody is looking in the street," she said. Ethel went into the parlor and peeped through the curtains. She said. "You may back your life Lena and Mrs. Seven'll be out gawping, and that Clatfart and Mrs. Alsop. Oh, I hope they haven't heard anything. If it gets about as he's out of his mind, they'll stop his compensation." "I know they will. They'd never stop his compensation for that," protested Ethel. "Well, they have been stopping some. It'll not get about. I'll tell nobody." "Oh, but if it does, whatever shall we do?"